This is what we teach in business school, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, but this is the standard curriculum, these last two quadrants. What is generally absent from most business schools is a professional focus on the first two quadrants, because there's a lack of appreciation and understanding of the systematology, of the ability to learn about that. It's thought that that's magic, you know, and once you get out here, yeah, we can bring scale and knowledge to bear. And I'm here to say, no, my career is based. Another tribe I belong to is the tribe of the first two quadrants, right? And in clusters of innovation, the people who live in that cluster, more of them belong to that tribe. They may not even know it, but there are standards of behavior and business practice and methodologies that lower the transaction cost, that make it easier for people to deal with each other because they have a common set of values, a common set of approaches, and that's my tribe. So part of what I'm doing here today is sort of showing you the underpinnings of that tribal behavior. Job of the entrepreneur, the professional entrepreneur. Understand the process, and on a very specific opportunity, help everybody else understand the opportunity. The words on the slide say, visioning the future into the present. Why will you trust me with what you have and I need? Whether it's your money or your time or your invention, why will you trust me? One of the reasons you might trust me is that you knew my mother, and she was a good person. And you knew my father, and he was a good guy. You trust them, you trust me. That might have worked 100 years ago. But now I'm in Geelong, and my mom and dad grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I haven't been there in 35 years. I haven't lived there in 35 years. This continuity, this mobility of people, how do we now trust people? How do you trust people whose parents you don't know? You trust them because they communicate their knowledge. And you evaluate that knowledge, you test that knowledge, you do due diligence on that knowledge and on their ability to put into action that knowledge. So the knowledge that a professional entrepreneur has is the knowledge of the process, and then specifically to the opportunity, a reasonable set of expectations of what they're striving for, and most importantly, the ability to take that expectation and break it into steps and tell you how they're going to get there and communicate it now. So today, if I'm an entrepreneur with a business proposal and I'm just starting out, I'm not talking about this as much as I'm talking about this and how we're going to get there. In clusters of innovation, people get comfortable talking about these early high-risk stages, and they develop common practices to approaching them. And it allows the community collectively and individually to engage in these actions that make no sense. It makes no economic sense to invest in things that have never made money. How do you make that make sense? Well, you rely on tools. Now, I said the tools business was a lousy business, right? So let's look at the tools of business strategy and see how others have used them. These people are not selling the tools, they're selling the output of the tools. They're selling products and services. So the list here that we're going to touch on quickly, this is worth a whole 3-credit MBA course, these 5 bullet points. Complementary behavior versus competitive behavior, incremental enhancement versus invention, providing a total customer solution versus providing a product. Oh, using others' technology, not necessarily your own. and going after small niche markets. Two guys, pretty old guys, even older than me. Anybody recognize them? This is on the right, Thomas Alva Edison, standing behind a very early motion picture camera. That is a motion picture camera. Doesn't look all that different than the one the guy in the back of the room is using. Right there. It's got the light shield. It's got a lens. You know, what's different is pretty much is that they're capturing the information on a chemical component called film, rather than catching it in digital form on a SDI card. This film was a very sophisticated chemical process. Thomas Edison did not have the technology for that process. The guy who had it was George Eastman, right there. So Eastman is in this picture holding his film, and Edison is behind the camera, because together they brought the motion picture industry to the United States. Now, it's interesting and telling how they did it. George sold a product. Edison sold a service. George sold Edison film. Edison did not sell the camera. Edison sold you a seat in his movie theater where you watched a movie he had produced using his tool, the camera. So he chose the whole value chain rather than selling the tool. So, good idea or not, for Edison it was a necessary idea because there was nobody to sell the camera to. The movie industry was not mature. He needed to help create the industry, so later on, after there were people used to going to movie theaters and watching movies, and there would be more players in the industry, he could then sell the camera. He had the same challenge with the light bulb. So who invented the light bulb, now that you've had a few hints? I don't know if you can read these names, but all these people invented the light bulb. Yes, Edison did invent a light bulb. But in 1879, Edison invents a light bulb that uses a carbon filament in a vacuum. Now, even that technological innovation was not new, because here's the carbon filament, and here's the carbon filament, and here's even the carbon filament in a vacuum in 1860 by a guy named Swan in the UK. What Edison did do was he created the business of selling light. Edison did not make money initially selling the light bulb because there was nobody to sell it to, because nobody owned lighting fixtures and nobody had electricity coming to their place of business or work. So he built a vertically integrated, is the business term, business model where he generated electricity using a proprietary invention, the dynamo, distributed the electricity using a proprietary business relationship, a franchise from the city of New York initially, where he was allowed a monopoly, to sell to people lumens, light. And that's what you paid for. You paid for electrons coming through your light bulb and generating lumens. The business model does evolve because once it gets to scale and there are more players, he can sell you light bulbs, he can sell you lamps, his utility can sell electrons, and there's more complexity to the market. So obviously Edison wins with this great innovation. Of course I'm wrong. You learn by now when I propose the obvious answer, it's wrong. He loses because of this guy. This is a guy who believed that there was a better answer. Edison's answer was direct current. Direct current is what is in this device. The better answer is alternating current. Can run at much higher voltages, can be therefore transmitted long distances economically. So the coal-burning, polluting dynamo device or turbine device can be remotely located. It doesn't have to be in my community. So in New York, it was very attractive to put those coal-burning generating stations in New Jersey, across the Hudson River. Otherwise, Edison's solution required that that coal-burning furnace be down the block. Not a lot of fun. The guy who knew this and visioned this and tried to communicate the future into the present was Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was a nut, a brilliant nut. But he foresaw the power of radio, electromagnetic propagation, I mean, everything we really depend on and depended on principally in the 20th century for the communications revolution of the 20th century. But he also foresaw the power of alternating current. Here he is sitting, this is Nikola Tesla, sitting in a massive display of alternating current. That's lightning, static electricity. He's sitting there to display its safety. Well, first of all, here's marketing 101. This is a time-lapse picture. So he sits down in the chair, and then he leaves the room, and then they expose the film and do all that lightning. He didn't actually sit there and expose himself to all that stuff. But he believed it would be safe, but people didn't want him to die. But you've exposed yourself to these same charges. Matter of fact, you exposed your children to them. Every time you went to the Science Museum, you must have a local science museum here in Melbourne. What's the name of your local science museum? The Science Museum? Science Works. Well, when you go into Science Works, I can predict that there's a ball somewhere in one of their displays. It's either a silver ball or a glass ball. And if it's a silver ball, you go up to it and you put your hands on it, and your hair stands up. If it's a glass ball, you put your hands on it and move it around, and lightning follows your hands. Right? That's what's going on here, essentially. High voltage discharges with very low power. Why did he need to do this public relations stunt? Because Edison, in fighting alternating current, was saying it was dangerous. Stick your finger in that plug, it hurts. Westinghouse, who commercialized alternating current, said, no, it's safe. Look at our inventor sitting right there. The biggest harm to Westinghouse, however, was when the state of New York decided to electrocute people, as a way of putting them to death, right? So Edison said, oh yes, so Sing Sing is just up the Hudson River from New York City, where this all was coming out. And every time they would electrocute somebody in Sing Sing, the lights would dim in New York City. And Edison would say, yes, they're Westinghousing them up the river, So anyway, this brand war, you heard of Betamax versus VHS, you heard of Blu-ray versus whatever, this is a standards war. Edison loses the standards war. We know he lost because I'm holding DC current in my hand, and I'm not going to stick my finger in that bulb, in that light socket over there, because I know it's alternating current and it will hurt. So what do we learn from Edison? Hey, incrementalism is okay. You don't have to really be the inventor to be known for generations as the great innovator and inventor. That marketing the solution, is the key, always initially when you're entering a new market. So if you're in the market creation business, you have to market a complete solution, vertically integrated. You can back off later to marketing tools and marketing components and products. Say he developed a system, not a product. He understood how to attract investors. He didn't do this in Idaho. He did it in New York City. What he did wrong was he got embedded. He became an incumbent. Remember these incumbents and remember those curves that went like that? He got caught. He became the incumbent very quickly and then couldn't change. So he was destroyed.